Good evening, everyone. My name is Rick Quezada, and I'm the Director of Cultural Preservation for Ysleta del Sur Pueblo. Some of you might know us as the Tigua Indians. There's a reason for that. In the 1960s, when we first got recognized by the state of Texas, Lyndon B. Johnson passed the Tigua Act. So hence everybody knows us as the Tiguas because of the act. That's when we got state recognized. But finally in 1987, when we finally managed to receive federal recognition, we brought back our old name, which is Ysleta del Sur, which actually means Ysleta of the South. The original mother pueblo is located at the pueblo of Ysleta in New Mexico. We were forcefully brought here by the Spanish in 1680 during the 1680 Pueblo Revolt. And we've been here ever since. My people were staunch believers of preserving and protecting our culture, our traditions, our way of life, and most importantly, our language. All of those remain intact today, although highly, highly endangered, but nonetheless, they remain intact. There are still language classes that are given at the Pueblo, at the Cultural Center specific. As a historian myself, I give history classes to anyone interested in learning a little bit more about our Pueblo, but I also give history lessons to tribal members themselves. So we've been here since 1680. Established the mission in 1682, 2 years after the revolt, and that church is still functions to this day. You know, that is where we hold our most sacred ceremony, and our most sacred ceremony is the feast day of Saint Anthony. Our religious beliefs are a mixture of Tigua beliefs mixed with Catholicism, hence Feast of Saint Anthony. For the Feast of Saint Anthony, of course, in the Christian way or Catholicism, we start off with the Mass. Then after the Mass and the blessing ends, and we do a traditional corn dance. Corn dances that have been taking place at almost all of the New Mexico pueblos for a little over 2,000 years. The songs and the dances have remained the same. So I thought I would like to share a little bit about the history of our pueblo. Now let's go into the headdress. Traditionally, Pueblo people, we kind of didn't use the traditional headdress that you see with Plains Indians. Plains being the Sioux, the Lakota. But we did use a type of headdress. We used 2, sometimes even 3 feathers. Hence, when you visit the Pueblo, you see, especially for the Feast Day of St. Anthony, you see men wearing at least 1 or 2 or sometimes 3 eagle feathers. We've been using the traditional eagle feathers as a quasi-headdress since time immemorial. There is a ceremony that takes place. You have got to earn those eagle feathers in order for you to wear them. Earning them by giving back to the community, by teaching, by instructing, by mentoring someone in the community to be able to wear an eagle feather. Traditional leaders, religious leaders, elders of the community also wear headdresses, much like, not headdresses, but 2 or 3 eagle feathers. There is a famous picture of our people participating in the 1936 State Fair, which is a Centennial State Fair, and that is where almost all of the male Tigua tribal members wore a headdress. So we've been kind of using that headdress, the headdress that you know today, for a little less than 100 years. But the traditional headdress for the Tiguas has been 1, 2, or 3 eagle feathers at the back of their head. Yeah. I was talking to Jody a little bit before the dancers took the floor, and she was asking me about what I've been up to. And I recently graduated with an MA in history, and I applied for the PhD program, and I was accepted. And on my proposal, for my PhD proposal, I wanted to write about the Tigua Scouts. So the Tigua Scouts were a military force. They were a warrior society that belonged to our people. These guys were expert trackers. They could track anyone down. They provided services to the Spanish government when this was part of Spain. They provided their services to the Mexican government when this was when this was part of Mexico. And they also provided their services when this became part of the United States. My people scouted for Fort Bliss, and they also scouted for the Texas Rangers. Yeah, so I'm going to be writing my dissertation on the Tigua Scouts. The Tigua Scouts were actually my great-grandfathers, one maternal and the other one paternal. So I'm basically writing about my family members, actually. So there's a lot of history. One of the men that I'm going to be featuring in the proposal is a man by the name of Mariano Colmenero. And Mariano Colmenero was a chief of the Pueblo. He is a former scout, and he was highly sought after for his tracking abilities in fighting Comanches and in fighting Apaches in the area. But the most significant article that they accumulated from his interview, because he did a lot of interviews. He did a lot of interviews with the El Paso Times during around the time of the 20th century. But the one that was most significant for me as a Tigua language teacher is they collected about 150 phrases in Tigua, and they published it in an article called The Anthropological Survey, I think it was, in 1901, 1902. That article happened to capture a lot of Tigua. So the Scouts were a contributing military police force in the El Paso area, and personally, I consider them the first formal tribal police department.
Were they horsemen?
They were horsemen. Stories go, oral traditional stories that I've been witness to, because my great uncles were actually raised by the Scouts. They would say that the Scouts could tell their tracking abilities just by looking at a hoof print that a horse left. They could tell if that horse was sick. They could tell if that horse was tired, or they could tell if that horse was carrying a lot of weight. The next thing was that they knew where all the fresh grasses were. Animals, horses needed something to eat, right? But most importantly, they knew where all the water holes were at. They knew the lay of the land that put them at an advantage to be able to track people that needed to be tracked, basically. Yeah.
Before you all came down here in 1680, what area were you around Ysleta, New Mexico, or where were you?
Right.
Spread out?
Yeah, the mother pueblo is the pueblo of Ysleta.
Ysleta del Norte.
Del Norte, yeah. So what happened, the 1680 Pueblo Revolt breaks out on August 10th, 1680. And basically all hell breaks loose. You know, the Indians, they wanted to rid themselves from Spanish rule. We, in the Pueblo world, we as Pueblo Indians, we consider the Pueblo Revolt the first American Revolution. It was Native Americans fighting a European empire. To us, that is the first American Revolution. So they united under a one man by the name of Pope. And Pope was a shaman. He was a religious leader, but he was targeted by the Spanish because the Spanish were trying to erase Native American healing methods. The Spanish thought that Pueblo Indian healing methods were tied to the devil. And the Spanish were zealous Catholics. So they were trying to stamp out native religion. Pope was able to unite all of the pueblos in New Mexico. And on August 10th, he unleashed the Pueblo armies. They defeated Antonio de Otermin, who was a governor back then. They defeated him at the Battle of Santa Fe. So I don't know if most of you have been to Santa Fe, but imagine 1680 right there in that little plaza right in front of the Palace of the Governors. There was war right there. Now it's a nice place. It's a plaza. It's nice, but that plaza has a lot of history. So Antonio de Otermin gets defeated in August 10th of 1680. He retreats. His area or his target was the Juarez mission just across the border that was known as the real El Paso del Norte in 1680. So he was trying to get to present-day Juarez, actually. But he is being attacked by all of the Indians as he is retreating from Santa Fe. And he stops at the pueblo of Ysleta. He captures 317 Tiwas in 1680, and he brings them down to the Juarez area. 1681, he is given orders to retake New Mexico. He goes back. Again, he is defeated. He stops again at the pueblo of Ysleta. He captures another 385 Tiwas from that pueblo, and he brings them down to the El Paso area. My people are the descendants of those two groups of people that was forcefully brought here by the Spanish in 1680 and in 1681. Between 1680 and 1682, my people were housed right in front of where the plaza of the Juarez mission is located. After some scuffles there, 2 years later, then Ysleta del Sur Pueblo is established, and my people start building what today you all know as the Ysleta mission. So we are the only Native American tribe that was actually forced into the state of Texas, as opposed to out, right? Because a lot of the Native American tribes that lived in Texas were actually forcefully removed to the state of Oklahoma. Yeah.
You talked about the scuffles in Juarez at the mission. Of course, that was established for the Mansos and Sumas, right?
Right.
Was it scuffles among the Indian
Amongst-
tribes, and then they segregated them into their own natural groups? Is that right?
That is correct. They separated us due to our language. People of the same language tend to stick together, right? So there was another group that was actually forcefully brought down here. Those were known as the Piro Indians. And the Piro Indians were located in Socorro, New Mexico. And today there's a little hamlet in Juarez called Senecu de San Antonio. Senecu was a home of the Piro Indians. That's where they got established. But they are our linguistic cousins. We spoke two different dialects of the same language. Very, 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 very similar languages. In fact, I'd like to share a story with you. Senecu was known as Senecu de San Antonio, and then we were known as Ysleta de San Antonio, meaning that both villages we celebrated the Feast of St. Anthony. For a little over 200 years, for the Feast Day of St. Anthony in June, which is held every June 13th, we kind of did like a call and response. And what I mean by that is the Pueblo of Senecu, which is located on the Mexican side of the river, they would start the Feast Day of St. Anthony, and then they would start singing and dancing. Us on this side of the river, we would hear them. And then once they would break, we would start. That happened from 1682 to 1910. In 1910, it ceases to be performed because, as you all know, 1910 was a watershed year for Mexico, right? That was the start of the Mexican Revolution. The Mexican Revolution displaced a lot of people. So the Piro villages in Senecu were dissolved. A lot of the people that lived in Senecu were absorbed into our community. And then a lot of them went back north.
What did the Tiguas, your people, call this area as we know today as Texas? Did they have a name for it?
We did not have a name for it because, like I said, we were not originally from here. We have a name for our village. And the name for our village is Xerhueftuju, which basically means Ysleta of the South. Because the original mother pueblo is known as Xerhuepac, the pueblo of Ysleta. So we are more to the south, but we didn't have like a name for the state of Texas. I hope I answered your question. We did not have a name for the physical location of Texas because to us it was just more property, more land. We were not confined to boundaries. That is a European concept. We were tied to the land. You know, we weren't like, oh, we're from this side of the river and you're from that side of the river. You know, we considered people from that side of the river brothers as one and the same. So, but yeah, we did not have a name for Texas. We had a name for our village, which was called Xerhueftuju, Ysleta of the South. So I was going to introduce myself in our language because it's customary to introduce ourselves in our language. So the phrasing or the wording that I'm going to do is I am going to introduce myself in Tiwa, greet you kind of like in the evening because it's evening. I'm going to give my Tiwa name and then I'm going to welcome you. All right, and then I'm going to kind of translate it if I can, right? Because Tigua does not, there's no like a literal translation from Tigua to English. It's more like a loose translation, you know what I mean? So there we go. Makuam Kharimba, Kinumam Kimam, Tetaiham Turkave, Dios Pamahini Checherimba, Pau. I said, Makuam Kharimba, welcome everyone. Tetaikiham Turkave, my Indian name is Sun Leader. Sun Leader. Yeah, when I was a little kid, they named me that because I've always had a red face. Right? And then the last part is, God bless you all. Dios Bamahibiche. Thank you.